Wars of Liberation. The legend of Napoleon Bonaparte. France finally met his match in the War of the Sixth Coalition. After 2 decades of war, France succeeded in surviving onslaught after onslaught from neighboring monarchies. Napoleon dismantled the First French Republic by performing a coup in 1799, and through his tactical brilliance, became a near unstoppable force. Countless nations had risen and fallen together against him in 5 preceding coalition wars, but this 6th War of Liberation proved a venerable threat. In truth, France had overexpanded as a means of suppressing its enemies, and Napoleon's flaws, although few, began exposing vulnerabilities that even he could not account for. Background: Napoleon on the battlefield in Borodino, 1812. Image credit Oleg Golovnev via Shutterstock. Initially, the coalition wars began as a response to French revolutionists overturning their social order, executing the French king, Louis XVI. The neighboring empires desired to dismantle the French Republic and replace the fragile First Republic with another French monarch, lest revolutionaries attempt such revolts elsewhere. Other nations desired an opportunity to seize vulnerable French land and assets, but France proved capable of self-defense, and Napoleon crowned himself emperor in 1804. Between 1792 and 1809 there were 5 coalition wars, resulting in a French victory each time. However, the 5th had proven that even Napoleon was capable of defeat. The empires of Austria and Prussia had lost large amounts of land and power under French terms of peace, and Britain was being targeted by an extended form of economic warfare. An on-again, off-again enemy and ally, Russia drew a line in the sand in April of 1812, demanding France retreat from its occupation of Prussia. Napoleon, always preferring to make the first strike, moved to invade Russia that June. The Russians utilized a system of tactical retreats, and when Napoleon entered Moscow in September, he found it burned and abandoned. Trapped and forced to retreat, Napoleon brought his army, which originally consisted of 615,000 men, back to France. Only 110,000 sickly soldiers returned. Napoleon's reputation suffered greatly, and the occupied nobility of Europe saw their opportunity to launch an assault. Read more. War of the First Coalition. Belligerents. Battle of Leipzig. Image credit via Creative Commons. Prussia was not pleased about supporting Napoleon's failed invasion of Russia, and Austria's alliance with France ended in February of 1813. Russia, Britain, and Sweden also grouped into a coalition agreement during the early winter of 1813. Finally, Prussia defected in February of 1813. These allied nations also received support from Spain, Portugal, Sardinia, Sicily, Sweden, Mecklenburg-Schwerin, Bavaria, Austria, the Confederation of the Rhine, the Netherlands, and Denmark. Notably, the Confederation of the Rhine, established as a vassal to France, defected in January 1814. Similarly, Austria and Bavaria did not declare war on France until August and October of 1813, respectively. By May of 1813, French allied Italy and Naples were all France had to rely on, with Russian and Prussian armies occupying the Duchy of Warsaw, another French vassal. Last, the United States was equally up in arms against Britain elsewhere, and the region of Denmark-Norway only switched sides after the Battle of Leipzig in October of 1813. The Spring Campaign, Battle of Dresden. Image credit Karl Vernet, 1758 to 1836, and Jacques-François Suibach, 1769 to 1823. Jojan artwork by Vernet and Suibach via Creative Commons. Work is in the public domain in the United States. Napoleon brought a force of nearly 400,000 to the table in recognition of the great threat that the Sixth Coalition posed. Heavy fighting occurred in May 1813, with either side losing around 40,000 men, but the battles of Lutzen and Bautzen were French victories, nonetheless. An armistice occurred, in which a failed negotiation between Napoleon and Austria secured the coalition another ally. The Swedes occupied Hamburg for a week, but fled in late May when French forces came to retake it. Austria then provided 300,000 troops, and Russian forces arrived at the front, bringing the Allied coalition headcount to over 1 million soldiers, against France's 650,000. Napoleon brought a crushing blow to the Allies in late August of 1813 at the Battle of Dresden, but elsewhere, France underwent a series of losses, particularly on September 6 at Dennowitz. These losses planted a seed of doubt in the minds of vassal states throughout the Confederation of the Rhine. The Battle of Leipzig. Monument to the Battle of Nations, a memorial of the defeat of Napoleon in the War of the Sixth Coalition in Leipzig, Germany. Image credit RM via Shutterstock. In October of 1813, almost 200,000 French-aligned troops fought against a 365,000-strong coalition force. Centered in Leipzig, Saxony, Napoleon originally regrouped here to find a defensive terrain against superior coalition numbers. A massive defeat occurred for France, who lost around 75,000 men. They retreated across the Rhine, albeit with a small victory over their former ally Bavaria in the Battle of Hainaut in late October. The Confederation of the Rhine dissolved, and the Allies offered Napoleon generous terms of peace, which he neglected to accept. Read more major battles of the Napoleonic Wars. Other theaters and the campaign into France. View of the Lion's Mound and cannons at the Waterloo Battlefield Memorial, Belgium. Image credit Marcassana, photo via Shutterstock. Other theatres included the Peninsula War, 1807 to 1814, as well as the war in Denmark and Norway, 1808 to 1809. The Allies had split up after Leipzig, and one segment pushed towards Holstein and managed to subdue the French-aligned Danes there. The Danish army still managed to retreat, but the January 1814 invasion of Schleswig saw a further progression of coalition victory. The Treaty of Kiel led to the detachment of Norway from Denmark and a partial fusion of Norway with Sweden. In the Peninsula War, France had been attempting to subdue British, Portuguese, and Spanish forces while occupying Spain. They managed to force France into a retreat, and by July 1813 pushed France back into the Pyrenees. Despite wins in the Battle of Maille and Roncesvalles, France had to flee after the Battle of Sauron on July 30th. The Duke of Wellington then brought his coalition troops out of Spain and into France in October. Near the end of 1813, the Duke of Wellington marched successfully against French forces within France. Napoleon made an appearance, but could not counter the larger assemblies of his opponents, albeit his remarkable success in his 6 days campaign. By March 31st of 1814, coalition forces occupied the city of Paris, and the French Senate officially deposed Napoleon. Read more Peninsula War. Aftermath. Napoleon's chief marshals rejected his order to retake Paris, bringing about his abdication on April 11th. This marked the end of the Wars of Liberation, the 6th installment of 5 previous failed attempts by the coalitions to end French domination. However, fighting continued elsewhere, which is why the typical end date is May 30th, 1814. Napoleon was exiled to the island of Elba, and the French monarch Louis XVIII was restored to the throne. The Congress of Vienna attempted to repair the scattered borders across Europe after the chaos of the prior decades. An era finally ended, and all was quiet in continental Europe. That is until Napoleon returned in strength, 9 months later, for 100 days. New France. New France was a large area in continental North America that was colonized by France from 1534 to 1763. The huge territory comprised of 5 individual colonies, including Canada, Quebec, Trois-Rivières and Montreal, Hudson's Bay, Acadie, Plaisance, and Louisiana. The territory stretched from the Hudson Bay to the Gulf of Mexico, and from Newfoundland to the Canadian prairies. Discovery and exploration. New France map. The Italian navigator Giovanni da Verrazzano explored the coast of North America from what is currently known as the Carolinas up to the north. This led his sailing ship to the present-day New York, which he named Nouvelle Angoulême in the honor of the French king, Francis I. Verrazzano's exploration convinced the king to establish a colony in the newly explored area. This territory, that was located between the English Newfoundland and New Spain, Mexico, were named by Verrazzano as Nova Gallia, New France, and Francesca. In 1534, the French maritime navigator Jacques Cartier took possession of the New France territory for King Francis I by mounting a cross on the Gaspe Peninsula. The next year, the French fleet sailed further into the St. Lawrence River and visited the indigenous settlements at Stadacona, Quebec City, and Hochelaga, Montreal. In 1541, Jacques Cartier, along with Sieur de Roberval and Jean-François de la Roqueue, established the first short-lived colony, which was named Charlesbourg-Royal by Cartier. Their attempt to establish a French settlement in North America turned out to be unsuccessful. In 1604, the French established the colony of Acadia in the surrounding areas of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Colonization. A map of New France in 1750. The French King Henry IV sent Samuel de Champlain, Pierre Duguay, Sieur de Mons, and a group of 28 men to establish the city of Quebec in 1608. However, the early settlers of the land succumbed to the harsh climatic conditions and diseases, and therefore colonization attempts on the land proved to be quite difficult. Champlain then established alliances with the indigenous Algonquin and Montagnais, who were then in conflict with the Haudenosaunee Iroquois people. In 1627, the French chief minister Cardinal Richelieu established the Company of 100 Associates for facilitating more investment in New France, and thereby make the French colonies more prosperous. However, in 1629, Quebec City was captured by the British and remained under their control till 1632. Samuel de Champlain returned to establish Trois-Rivières, the second city in New France. The French King Louis XIV in 1663 dissolved the Company of 100 Associates and made the colony of New France a royal province. The king also sent the Caragan-Saliers Regiment to Quebec in 1665 to conquer the indigenous Iroquois in order to occupy their land. More than 3,000 settlers, which included girls of marriageable age, were sent to the territory during 1663 to 1673 to develop and populate New France. The French built several forts throughout the massive territory to protect it from the indigenous peoples and also to prevent the British from expanding in the Americas. The French then moved towards the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River and claimed their possession over a large part, including the Ohio River Valley, Mississippi River Valley, La Louisiane, and other settlements. Both the British and French economies were heavily dependent on the fur trade, and this led to the Fur Wars from 1613 onwards. In 1713, the French surrendered the regions of Acadia, Hudson Bay, and Newfoundland as per the Treaty of Utrecht. In 1756, the 7 Years' War started in Europe. The American part of this war was referred to as the French and Indian War. In the beginning, the French, who fought together with the Aboriginal tribes, launched surprise attacks on the British settlements. But soon they were overpowered by the British forces. The war finally ended in 1763 with the Treaty of Paris, and French rule in North America came to an end, and the territory of New France was transferred to the British.
Give thanks. Again, we'll just share basic information accordingly. Accordingly. I want to see if I can. I love them information. Yeah, yeah.